streaming the session, but we always record the analytics champion office hours, and they can be found on the YouTube channel, which I've posted in the chat. And if you just search for it, you can also find it on YouTube. It's pretty easy, and all of our sessions are there. So the recording has started. Welcome everyone to December EMEA office hours. We've got a kind of like limited audience today because it's before holidays and everything, but I think it's still super useful to go through the questions we've received from people who signed up and just discuss those so they can be reviewed at a later time on YouTube as well. Over to you, Gibson, if you want to start with the first one. I don't know if we want to do intros maybe as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with a little bit of introduction from myself. My name is Gibson, and I'm based in South Africa, and I work for a financial institution as an Adobe Analytics specialist, and I am returning as the Adobe champion for the third time this year, for this time. Over to you, Deb.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And my name is Deb. I've been with the program. It's my second year. And I work as a solutions delivery manager for Deloitte. And I'm based out of Toronto. And my work generally focuses on providing Adobe Analytics implementations and consulting on data setup for different sites within Deloitte's marketing portfolio.
Cool. And I'm in consulting as well. I'm Iwana. I work for IBM. This is my second year as an Adobe Analytics champion. I also cover similar topics in consulting clients on implementations, insights analysis, anything that has to do with Adobe Analytics, basically. And yeah, I'm also one of the leads for office hours, so you'll probably see my face here quite often. But yeah, let's get started.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with the first question that we received, which states, within Adobe Analytics, how do you best address the exclusion of bots using AA segments, right? So just to start, like within Adobe Analytics, there is a default way of excluding bots or crawlers within the report suite. So this is done by default before the data is processed and stored within Adobe Analytics. But because bots usually evolve and there's usually like new bots and new crawlers, like in oftentimes, there are ways whereby you can exclude them manually by yourself. So I see this question was specifically speaking about creating like segments, right? So which means that the data would have been already collected and stored within Adobe Analytics, and you don't want to include it within your reports. So one of the possible ways, which I think would be best, it's for businesses or users that are storing IP addresses. So if you are one of the customers that store IP addresses within your Adobe Analytics implementation, that is not already something that is configured by default, you will need to do that, and also ensuring that you conform to the privacy and consent related issues. But if you're already doing that, one of the possible ways that you can do is that if you're storing those IP addresses in a custom variable such as an EVA, what you can actually do is that you can create a segment that will exclude certain IP ranges. So if you already know like the IP ranges of traffic that you would consider as bots or crawlers, then I think it will be easier to do that, and then just filter out what you don't need, right? And if you're not storing IP addresses because of privacy issues and things like that, one of the other ways that you can do is that you can observe the traffic that is coming into your site by maybe checking some of the browsers, because some of the bots use specific browsers. So then you can look for those browser versions and check if those could be considered as bots. And then if you also see that there is no browser version and then the traffic is quite high, that could also be one of the contributors to your bots. And then you can like do a test and then see if it's something that you would like to exclude. So on that as well, you can also look at certain operating system, like the unknown operating system that you would normally receive traffic from your users, such as Windows, iOS, and others. But once you start seeing that there is a lot of traffic that is coming from Linux bots, I mean Linux operating system, it could possibly mean that it's bot traffic because a lot of bots are automated and do use um, Linux operating system. So those are some of the things, but that doesn't mean that if you're seeing like any traffic that is coming from Linux, it means that it's automatically a bot, right? I think it's an analysis that you'll have to do by checking your traffic and seeing that where's your traffic coming from, and then try and see if the operating system and that you're seeing or the browser do make sense. All right. And one of the other possible ways is to check the domain that is redirecting traffic to your site. You can check if that domain is probably some of the domains which are unusual, or if it's something that could be related to a bot. And you can get some of this information from the internet, and maybe just check some of the most common bots domains, and then you can go and check the domain values that you're receiving within your analysis workspace, and then you can easily create a segment based on that. So I think also one thing that you'll have to note is that bots evolve timely. So there will be new bots that come out every time. So you also have to look at and review the segments that you create to ensure that you update them and you keep them maintained so that you can exclude that traffic. But I think one of the best ways is to rely on the default options that are there within Adobe Analytics. And then if that doesn't work for you, then you can try and use segments as your way to stop or exclude some of this bot traffic that you're receiving within your data. Okay,
Yeah.
think
What I
yeah.
would say to that question is there are a couple of ways. One, like Gibson said, the IP exclusion. It's one of the features that you see in the admin section for a report suite. When we have new audits going through for, say, products that look at whether our tagging is still on, for tagging governance tools, or say for your SEO tools, those crawlers, we keep adding that list. It is manual. That's one. And then the other way is you can create a segment with the different browsers and operating systems. The recommendation over there would be to keep building on a segment, to add a segment or with the particular browser itself, like say Linux, and then see how much percentage of traffic that is, and then build on that segment. Add maybe a browser or like a browser to that. Let's say Firefox, and see how much percentage of traffic you are excluding, and again build on that, and maybe add additional data like typed or bookmarked or a direct channel. Check the traffic coming in from certain referrers for certain audience groups, and keep building on the segment and see where and how much of percentage of traffic that is. So what we did essentially is we build a segment with different conditions and seen exactly from where the traffic was coming in, which was very erratic, which there is a way of looking at it also based on time and hours. Which time of the day you're seeing a certain inflation of traffic, and separate out, do that investigation, and feel confident in that segment. And when you're confident in that segment, you can start to apply it across your data. So we work with a lot of geographies. So different countries also see exclusions and setups differently. So based on that, you can build out segments. There is also an interesting report called the bot report. It's a template report. You can take a look at that and see on which pages as well you're seeing bot traffic. So it's called like the bot traffic report. They do different data cuts. You can take a look at that. It's available in the template section, or sorry, rather the if you go to the projects and you see on the landing page, there is the report section. You'll find these bot pages traffic report. Pull that in, and from there you will notice that you see bot page views and occurrences. They are collected and they're processed, and you can check within a certain date range. And you can also see the bot names, and from there you can decide what to do further with that. So that gives you an additional avenue to test out the data which you're seeing, see where which pages are being hit the most, and take it from there. Yeah.
Awesome. I think you both covered a great deal on this topic. What I would say is, for bot traffic, it's always good to have, constant monitoring, and anything that looks suspicious should be investigated. Things like it depends, I guess, on the sort of security you have on your website or app as a whole, because sometimes you can, through security measures, block these things as well. But you can always look at regions if it's like a targeted sort of attack from a specific region, or you can. I've seen in the past where there was not necessarily an obvious bot traffic kind of situation, but there were people maybe targeting specific features of the website, and it took a great deal of looking into the data to understand what was happening exactly and why was that like an easy target, let's say. I think another thing to be mindful of is looking at the sources of traffic, not just the operating systems and browsers, but also the so-called marketing channel, because that can help you understand, if there's a sudden increase in one of your channels but it doesn't make any sense, you can't break it down further to see tracking codes or anything like that. It could be there are bot farms or things like these that just like power traffic to your website, but it's not necessarily quality traffic. So there's a lot that, in my opinion, should be kind of monitored in this space. And that's kind of like a segue into the next question. We're talking about campaigns. Is there a way to create a segment that includes visitors who entered a website through a campaign? So when we talk campaign, my mind goes, as a straight to marketing channels, and how you can identify those easily to understand where your traffic is coming from, how your users got there, if they accessed an ad or any kind of social media post. And I'm gonna put in the chat as well a very good article we have that is written by one of our Adobe Analytics champions and is focusing on marketing channels. One second. So what I would say is this article covers kind of tracking codes and how to set those up as well. And I think that's the key when you want to be able to easily identify who is coming to your website and why and where from. When you set up a campaign, it's very important to make sure those tracks are in place correctly. And I think you should be kind of, when you create your strategy for tracking codes, you can either go with a very basic format that exists and it's easy to access, or you can come up with a customized version, which means you're going to create either like a campaign URL builder or any kind of format you find easy for you and your team, but you can customize and decide which bits of information you need each tracking code to have. So if let's say we're talking about a paid campaign, you could add details about the channel, the platform where it was published, the placement, but you could have different variation of a specific ad. You can have, so you can mention, or you can, maybe if you have an email, you'll have 4 different email types you're sending out for that campaign. In your tracking code, you can make sure to include that information. If it's a specific placement, if it's a specific type of link, a specific color, you can make it as rich in information as you want to. And I think that makes it then very easy to analyze on Adobe Analytics, based on any criteria you want. So the question says, is there a way to create a segment that includes visitors who enter the website through a campaign and then clicked on a link in the same visit? And then I want to see everything the visitor did, including and after that visit. For example, a visitor meets my criteria. Can I see the pages that the visitors viewed after meeting my visit level criteria? So that's when you would start building your segments. You can do it on a visitor level, as it's mentioned here, and then work with those visitor segments and see what they did on your website in multiple visits. So that can be done, but I think the easiest way to do that is to work with your tracking codes and make sure they include that sort of information. So if you start creating a user segment, you specify that they arrive to your website through a specific placement or a specific um, platform or channel or type of media, and then you can see the sort of activity that happened on the website. um, I think that covers it. That the article I shared is a really good one, so I would definitely recommend going through it as well.
Yeah, just to jump in and add a little bit to that is that like when you're creating a segment within a Analytics workspace, is that you need to ensure that the container that you select would give you the expected data, right? So by default, when you create a segment within Segment Builder, I think you would have hit selected by default. So I think what most people the mistake that they make is that they would like build out a segment using the tracking code that you've already supplied to your campaign publishers and everyone that is managing the campaign. Is that if you're using Hit as your container, you might not be able to see all the visits, right? Because the question is looking at like on a visit level. So if you need to see all the visits, you need to ensure that within your segments builder container, you select a visitor, and then you can build out your segment touch points, and then you can also add like your sequencing within your segments to say within this time frame or within a single visit, these are the users or this is the traffic that are you expecting to see. So yeah, just wanted to emphasize that like whenever you're creating a segment, especially if it's for campaigns, just ensure that the container that is selected is suitable for the scenario.
And maybe what I forgot to mention as well is, once you capture your tracking codes in a variable, you're able to do classification rules, and that's what I meant. Like if you have different bits of information in your tracking code in the same structure, then you can start breaking that down further into variables that look specifically at campaign name or medium or um, just thinking of things I had in with one of my clients, things like the placement, the segment they were targeting in that ad particularly. So through classification, you can break that down further.
Okay. I think that leads us to the next question. So the question that we have, it says, we have several search categories coded to the data layer of our website, detailing product selections. These were not coded entirely consistently. I think, for an example, hotel plus flight with spaces, and there's hotel plus flight without spaces. How do we combine this in the report suite components or rename a product category, right? So basically, I think this is an implementation issue, right? whereby you find yourself in a situation whereby like you're sending the same values in to your Adobe Analytics implementation. But you might find whereby like there is spaces or underscore for some values when they're being passed. So how Adobe Analytics functions is that it will see these values as different dimension items. So when you're creating a report within Analysis Workspace, you will see that the numbers separated and they're not within a single dimension item. So that might cause some issue, right? So like when you face such an issue, or sometimes you can try and prevent this from happening when you create an implementation. So you can use certain JavaScript functions. One that I know, it's called the replace function, which allows you to remove any spaces that exist within a string. Then you can create a data element and then return that value to your EVA. I think this is the best way because then you're ensuring that the data is clean and is properly formatted before it even arrives to Adobe Analytics processing server, right? Then if you don't have this capability or technical capability of writing code within your Adobe launch, one of the options that I think you can use is processing rule, because once data has been sent to Adobe Analytics, you still have an opportunity to modify that data within the processing rules. So what you can actually do is that specify these values that you already have, the one with a space and the one without a space, and just modify them to a common value. So what you can actually do is that write like two conditions, one with a space, and assign it to a value that you want, and then write another one, and then assign it to the value that you want. But the problem is that once you have the data already arrived within Adobe Analytics, you might not be able to modify it, right? Like let's say for an example, like you already have like historical data from months or years, and you want to combine that data into a single dimension. So one of the possible ways that you can do is like create a segment that combines those two values that are different. Then you can use a segment to present the numbers rather than having to select like two different values. And another possible way is to use classification, whereby you can write classification rules and then assign certain dimensions. It's just that it will introduce a new classification variable. So if your values were coming into an EVA, then you would have an additional EVA, I mean, an additional variable for that EVA, which is created by classification. So I think the best way to deal with this is to deal with it from the implementation side before even the values are sent into Adobe Analytics, because once the values are sent into Adobe Analytics, you won't be able to modify them without creating processing rules or classification or creating segments, which I think if you are using a JavaScript is a more cleaner way of resolving this issue and ensuring that the data that you receive is always clean. And I think you can do this with any of the issues that you experience within your environment. So if you see that there are some values that are not coming in correctly, if there's a spelling error, then you can use JavaScript to modify that value and then send the correct one to Adobe Analytics.
Yeah, I would just add that as some of us move on to customer journey analytics, a lot of this is again available to manipulate as at the data view level within the derived fields. You can make changes to certain strings, and the flexibility over there is much more, easier. Um, and you can. It doesn't matter if you it all matters that if you have access to the data view, and from there you can use the derived fields, remove the spaces, and even combine certain fields together to arrive at a particular desired string that you need. So a lot happening over there that you can explore if you have the product.
I think we can move on to the next one. So the next question that we have, time spent can be a challenging metric to work with in Adobe Analytics. To improve accuracy, we apply segments to exclude single page visits and exit pages from our time spent calculation when analyzing a specific page. Do the analytics champions have a recommendation on best practices for leveraging this data? Are there any customer implementations that could automatically provide a more accurate of time spent on page? Okay, this is quite a tricky one. I'm not sure if any one of us wants to take this.
I can add a few things. So I know we have the default metrics that we use with time spent per visit, or you can kind of see the time spent on page. It depends on how you kind of link the metrics to specific dimensions to see how much a user spent time on a specific piece of content or any kind of feature you have on your website. I would say you have to make sure this is something I've tried in the past, to remove outliers, because you will have some people who maybe keep a page open, or they will skew your numbers. That's something I've tried to remove in the past to get a closer number to reality, if that makes sense. Um, and what the question is mentioning there, to apply segments that exclude single page visit, that sort of logic, that's something I also do. I think also you have to make sure you look at it in context, and you know, maybe you've got I don't know if this is kind of answering the question, but this is how I approach it. If you've got a home page and you want to have a look at the time spent on page, right, and maybe it looks very low and you're concerned, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are not engaging with your content or it's the wrong thing. You just have to correlate it with the purpose of that page, because maybe it means the users are actually finding the content quickly enough and they go to a next page. So you always have to kind of correlate, the time spent on site versus on a specific page, or where they go next, how they interact with that specific piece of content or feature or functionality you have. In terms of implementations that could provide a more accurate measure, I am not sure. I work with the same metrics that are the default ones in Adobe. I don't know if Deb, you've got other thoughts.
From an implementation perspective, no. I would just say the thing with this metric is very tricky. Is like you were saying, it depends on it depends on how you read it. Like it skews if it's for if it's sort of is so is not finding what they need. Are they staying on the site longer, right? So those are some of the questions we tend to think about when we use this metric. And it also focuses more on length. It doesn't necessarily say they're finding what they want quickly. So we tend to not use this metric a lot, essentially. But if you do plan to, it would be a conversation that you want to have around the bucketing that they have, right? Like what do we consider a good time spent on site, right? Like is that what we are looking for, right? Within the metric, what is that optimum range? And then work towards that range, or try to look at those that are not fitting into that optimal range. So even if you're using the metric, it does need a little bit of conversation on which bucket, because time spent on page is different. It's bucketed into different time intervals. So my idea would be to look at the metric, define what the optimal range is, and see how you can move them towards that range. From an implementation perspective, I don't have any additional input.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think, sorry, you go.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to say, to add to what Deb was saying, like from an implementation perspective, right? What we have done in our organization, especially when we're trying to measure the time spent during like a form or an application, what we have done is that we have created a custom variable that tracks that time. So what we do is that within the JavaScript implementation is that when you start an application, we get the timestamp of when you started. Then we also get the timestamp of when you completed. And then based on that calculation, then we get the difference of the time it took you to complete that application. Then you might find that the time that is returned might be like, for an example, 4 minutes and 30 seconds, or sometimes might be an hour and 30 seconds. So to report on that within Adobe Analytics is you're going to receive a whole lot of different values, right? So what we then do is that through classification, then we have bucketed the time. Then we can say that any time between 1 and 5 minutes belongs to one dimension item, which is 1 and 5 minutes. And then we do the same thing from 5 until 10, we bucket that time. Then anything greater than maybe an hour would have a dimension item called greater than an hour. Then everything is bucketed into that dimension item. So I think it also depends on the use case, right? So I feel like if you're working with the time spent metric for pages, like as the time spent on a page, the default metric it's sufficient because it looks at the the previous hit before you moved on to the next hit. So if your implementation is right, then it should work properly for you. But once you start looking at like time spent on certain processes like a form application, or it can be anything that a user does on an application, I feel like having your own custom variable would work best, and then you can use classification to bucket the time.
Cool. I don't know if it's my connection, but the screen's gone
I
blank.
I think it's on my side. I see it has frozen. Not sure if Deb, you have this open on your side. Maybe you can take over.
Then I don't have share screen access.
Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah, apologies. I don't know what happened. Seems like it
No, don't
just
worry. It might be your connection. Maybe if you turn your video camera off or it consumes too much bandwidth or something.
yeah. Let me see.
Let's see if this works.
Okay.
Oh, I think you have to stop it, maybe. Can you
Mm.
stop sharing?
Okay. Let's see. Okay, nothing is moving. It's just frozen. But I can
Right.
speak over the question because I do
Yeah,
have it
let's do
here.
that.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the next question, right? Um, I'm trying to track visits to a particular page from an entire section of my website. The page in question has a form field on it. I'd like to know which section of the site drives the most amount of visits to the page. Okay. So, having looked at this question, right? So you want to see which site section actually attributed to like a form conversion or like a form fill. So the best way to do this, I also think it's based from an implementation perspective. You need to ensure that each page has metadata or data layer values identifying a section, right? Um, so if you have that implemented from your data layer, then that can be populated into an EVA as soon as a page view event is being triggered. So on the form page, where the user fills in the form, then you can use a last touch attribution to credit the last section that redirected a user to fill in the form. So I think the most important thing is that you need to make sure that that value is populated from your data layer and it is being tracked within an EVA. Then if you don't have that implemented within your data layer, one of the other ways that you can report on this is to use the flow of a Fallout visualization using the page dimension, which then will show you where the user started and then till they arrive to the form fill page. Then you can see, like from the visualization, which other sections are users going to before they get to your form fill page. So I think if that doesn't work as well, you can use segments. So through segments, you can create a segment that would have sequencing in it. Then in that sequence, what you can basically say is that you would want to see users that came in through this particular section of the site. Then you can create a sequencing segment and say that within a single visit, how many of them went into that particular form fill page. Then you'll have to create like multiple segments for different sections. So if you've got like an article section, you'll have to create a segment for that. If you've got like a blog section, you'll have to create a segment for that. Then through your analysis workspace, you can list all those segments and then see which section is performing much better than the other. So I think I would prefer using the data layer option by making sure that the section is actually populated on all the pages. And once you have that, then you can use your last touch attribution model to see which sections have contributed to the conversion or to your form fill.
And I think just to add on to that, I totally agree with making sure that you can recognize different sections. By the way, your screen is starting coming back to us. It's we can see it again, but it's a blank workspace. I don't think it loaded properly. So just so you're aware.
Okay.
So I think there's other options. So you let's say you have ensured that in the data layer, when you capture a path, you can easily start identifying different sections of your website. You can create the segments as you said to analyze different segments and where they take the user. But in terms of features that you can use within Adobe Analytics, you can I'm just looking at the background. You can create a flow. So let's say you're interested in a specific page and understanding where users come from. You can use that to visualize it, to see where they come from, where they go next. And there's also a type of panel called next or previous item, which you can use, and it creates a quick summary of where user, or it depends on the dimensions you're working with. Um, or the metrics, but basically it shows you what happened before a specific item was reached or after that. So it's a nice way to understand the sort of activity that led to that feature being accessed. So there are different types of components in Workspace that can be super useful in that sense. But yeah, I think starting from the implementation, and if you need to identify particular sections, just make sure that is being considered in your implementation. And if you have that, then in Analysis Workspace, it's pretty easy to do it in different ways.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the ways we address the question of which page attributed to a form fill was using a participation metric. So in a certain visit, let's take a visit, you went through ABC page, and on the page A and page B nothing happened, and on page C was the form fill. what you would essentially use is a participation metric. You and what you're understanding using the participation metric on page C was that which pages participated in attributing that form fill. So this again is a question which you internally try to arrive on consensus, saying that okay, this is the way we are going to attribute success to other pages as well in the visit. Um, and essentially what you're saying is uh, the form fill didn't just happen on because of page C, because you can always use previous page and then you will know that page C was part of the part of the success of the form fill. But you're saying that every page in that visitor journey or visit actually helped in attributing to the success. So you can set up a participation metric, but today with the option within the tool itself, you just add a metric, and then you can change the attribution over there to participation and look at those numbers. So you're giving credit, equal credit, let's be specific, equal credit to each of the page within a visit to have success for that form fill. And then when you pull a pages report and you put the participation metric together, you will see which pages come up to your ranking, and you will know that those were my top pages which contributed to the form fill eventually. So that's just one another option you can think of.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. I think my PC is a little bit back now. Clearly, it's in a holiday mode as well. So, the segment that I was speaking about, so I had created a segment called article section, right? So within this, I chose the visit container, right? Because I'm only want to focus within one visit. But if I wanted to see like the entire all the visits of a user, then I would have chosen visitor, right? So what I've just said here is that site section, which is my custom variable, if it's equals to articles, right? Then within that single visit, then the page was equals to a lead form step one, which this I believe in as an example would be where you fill in your form, right? You want to see how many users or how many visits were generated, and then I created another one for the same, like from a forums section, and I said it's basically the same implementation. The only difference is the section. Then within that section, I specified forum. So now I have like two um, segments for different sections that lead to the same form. Then within my freeform table, then I pulled in those segments, then used unique visitors metric, or you can use any other metric that you want to use. And I can see between the two segments which I've created, which one is performing much better. And then I can see that the article section is probably performing much better than the forum section. Then if you have like much more sections within your site, then you would have created like more than I have here. So in this case, as I already mentioned, that we already have the section variable tracked within our custom eval. So the assumption is that you have that being populated from your pages, and then you also have your form page also tracked. Then you can then proceed to create your segments. So I think those are all the pre-submitted questions that we've had and we've covered.
Oh, yeah, we don't have any more questions in the chat currently. Um, yeah, we've got maybe if you can also, I don't know if it will work for you in case it goes slow again, but if you can drag in one of the panels for previous or next item, if you go on the left side under
Okay.
panels. Go to the left. The first, yeah, that there, that one.
Yeah.
You've got the next or previous item. That also helps kind of see similar things. I think it's one that I haven't used much, but I think it's super useful.
Yeah.
So you can basically say you want to see previous, if you select like previous on the direction, and then um, you can use like a specific page you're interested in.
Let me see.
Yeah, and then you can select a form. I think there's an example for a specific form even. Um, a lead form. There was, yeah, a lead form step 1, for example. And then it starts. Yeah. And if you build it, it starts showing you like where people are coming from.
And so here on the container, we selected visitor.
Yeah, it might be work better with visit, to be honest, but it shows you, obviously this is mockup data, but you can, this is like a quick analysis you can create easily, right? And then start from this if you want to analyze further. I just thought it would be good to have a look at this as well.
Cool.
Cool. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we're close of time. 7 minutes left. We can wrap it up. Appreciate it's close to holidays, so I feel like a lot of people have a lot of things to work on, and projects to close off before end of the year. It's quite a busy period, so I think we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Well,
everyone.
thanks
Thanks a
everyone.
lot.
As mentioned, all these sessions will be uploaded on YouTube. You can find their previous sessions, and hopefully, we're going to see people on the January one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.